So, you want to be a jet-setting FPV quad pilot? Well, you're in luck. Stay tuned. I'm here in Singapore on this sunny Sunday afternoon, and I'm going to share some hints and tips with you about travelling with quads. I've travelled with quads to USA, Europe, UK, Asia, the Middle East, and of course all around Australia. And there are really three pieces of homework you need to do before starting out on your journey. The first is to check your destination and whether or not you'll be allowed to enter, let alone fly, a quad or FPV in that location. So for me, the only place that's been a problem has been in Dubai. Ironically, the site of the World Drone Prix yesterday, and the only country that confiscated my quad upon arrival, kept it safe and gave it back to me upon departure. The airline lithium battery policy, get familiar with that, and also the airline policy in relation to carry-on baggage limitations, size, weight and number of items. This is the FPV quad equipment that I've brought with me to Singapore. On the left here, the items that are packed in my suitcase as checked-in baggage that goes in the hold of the aircraft, and on the right here is my carry-on backpack. This backpack gets strapped to my back all the way from check-in. I travel through security with it, passport control if necessary, and onto the aircraft. It weighs in at about 7 kilograms, which is the typical airline limit for any single one piece of carry-on baggage. Now, before I go through and dissect all of this, I need to point out the criteria for this trip and what I'll be doing with my quads. So I've only really got the opportunity to fly on the weekends as bookends to my travel, and so I'll typically have 1 day of flying at the start of this trip and 1 day of flying at the end of the trip. I've brought two quads with me, one as backup, and they both sort of have different purposes. The top one there is my Mitsuko 4-inch quad, and behind it the QAV 180. The QAV 180 can carry a high-def camera, the Mitsuko can't. Both are 4-inch quads running 4-inch props. I'm finding that that's a better travel combo because I can get more flight time, which is really what I want, for less weight that I'm carrying. So smaller batteries mean I can carry more of them and still keep my weight under 7 kilograms, effectively getting more flight time. So I would never bother travelling with my 6-inch 6S quad. It would barely give me 10 minutes flying time for all the 7 kilos of gear that I've got to cart for it. So let's go through and dissect this and have a look at what I've got. Most reputable airlines will allow you to carry 2 pieces of baggage as carry-on baggage, or at least 1 bag and 1 personal item. They normally rate a woman's handbag or a man with a small laptop bag as sort of a personal item, and then 1 piece of luggage to carry on board. I've set up my backpack in a way that I'm self-sufficient for a session of flying. If I was travelling from Australia to Europe, for example, with a stopover here in Singapore, and my checked luggage was going all the way through, I would still have enough equipment here to go and have a session of flying during my stopover. So let's see what's inside of this bag, or what makes up this bag. There is a pouch in the back here that is empty, but when I travel to the field I can slide my laptop and or iPad in there, but I leave it out of this to keep my weight down under 7 kilograms, leaving my laptop in its own bag for taking it on the plane. Now, first of all, the quads are attached in 2 ways. They have a strap here that passes over them. They really sort of can't go anywhere. Two schools of thought here. Leaving the props on does get more attention, I've got to say, but in some ways they sort of act to stop the quads falling out as well, so I prefer to leave them on. So if I unstrap that, now you'll see that there's an extra item here, a carabiner, that is actually holding the quad on. And in one case I did have somebody that undid that strap. They claimed that it was loose and they were trying to do it back up, but I suspect they were trying to steal one of my quads, and this just slowed them down enough that I could catch them. also means that in one other instance the quad slid out from under the strap and was just swinging on my back, but I didn't lose it. So the carabiner is just an extra safety measure, and I can easily unclip it. The same here on the Mitsuko is that it has a carabiner around one arm, just to as an extra measure. Now, having the quads on the back of the backpack I think is important because they have a terrible form factor, and if I tried to package them inside the backpack, I'm going to use up all the space. I do get plenty of questions from people, what are those drones strapped on your back, or questions like that, but I've never had any serious issues with security or airlines carrying them on the back here. At London Heathrow they did ask me once to put them inside of a bag, but as it turned out, when I questioned them why, they gave up and let me continue with them strapped on the back. I've removed the quads and emptied out all the side and top pockets. In this side we have a piece or 12-metre piece of nylon rope or cord that I'd use to retrieve a quad in a tree. Luckily I haven't had to use that yet, but I'd find a branch or stick or something, tie it to it, throw it over the branch and use it to try and pull my quad out of the tree. I have a old face washer or rag just to clean things down if I need it. Around to the top pocket here I have some SD cards, SD card reader, my VTX antennas, my GoPro session that happens to be in an old, probably blackout motor box, fits well in there, with a tissue to help clean the lens if I need it, a spare battery strap, and my LiPo to USB charger. It also helps to, or can be used to help tell battery voltage, but I'll use that to charge my GoPro session in the field if I need it. And around this side I have a couple of items, a spanner or wrench for doing the props. Now I've carry a couple of these, one in my checked baggage and one in here. I have had it confiscated on one or two occasions for really no apparent reason. So there is another prop nut tool that you can get, but some airlines or some security, it's not airlines, sorry, but security, are a bit funny about spanners. So these are only cheap ones, $3 or $4 from Banggood, so no big loss there. And I've got some electrical tape, which is always handy, explain about that later, and just some programming or USB cables if I need to program or charge my GoPro session. Now unzipping and opening the main compartment, this is what we have: my box of lipos, my transmitter, a fold-up chair, and my Quantum V2 goggles with a receiver on top. Let's have a closer look at these items. Now, when I carry my lipos like this, it makes life a lot easier. They're in a clear container, available from a hardware store, and each lipo, typically apart from some of these smaller ones at the end that I use for powering my receiver, video receiver and goggles, all the other main 4S lipos here are in their own individual compartment, which is always impressive for some of the airline staff if they do ask to look at your lipos. Now, check the airline policy regarding lipos. It's not about the security protocol, it's not really about the country, it's about what the airline will let you carry. So go onto their website and look for their lipo policy. For most airlines they set a maximum watt-hour rating. Some it's 100 watt-hours, some it's 160, but typically that's per battery. So I've never had any trouble carrying this number of batteries. Each battery is rated to, I think, about 15 or 20 watt-hours, so they're well and truly under those limits, and there is no limit on the number of batteries that you can carry for personal use with all of the airlines that I've travelled with. But a lot of them do specify that they must be packaged individually. Now this is where my roll of tape can come in handy. I have on one instance, they've asked me to tape up all of the connectors, and so I carry this tape for that purpose. I don't really think it's necessary when they have individual compartments, but if I do get asked, I can comply with that request. So that's how I carry the lipos, and I typically print off that lipo information from the website of my carrier and put it with me in the bag. If anybody asks any questions, I can at least show due diligence that I've read the rules and I understand them, and that shuts most people up. So that's the batteries. In here I have 10 batteries, and because they're small quads, I've got 6 1000 milliamp hour 4S batteries and 4 1300 4S batteries. And as I said, some goggle and video receiver batteries at the end there. Now, another thing you'll notice is that what I've done is all my charged batteries are face up, and all my discharged batteries are face down. So I'm actually halfway through charging them all at the moment. I've put them all back in here to show you. Now, there are other ways that you can remember this. A friend of mine suggested using rubber bands, putting rubber bands around the charged ones. That way you just pull them off when you want to go fly and you know straight away that they've been used. I've got these on some of my batteries, but to be honest, I always forget and I don't use them, so I should set that to green. Another important consideration in my quad choice and battery choice is the fact that all of these batteries, the 1000s and the 1300s, will work with both the Mitsuko and the QAV 180. The Mitsuko is more designed to, or optimal battery is these smaller 1000s, and the QAV, the optimal battery is the 1300s. But both batteries work with both quads, meaning if I trash one quad, I'm not limited to half my batteries. I can use the batteries from one with the other. Some of the other little knickknacks I carry in here is a XT60 to JST pigtail converter thing here. This will allow me to run one of the 4S batteries to my receiver. I don't think my goggles are rated for 4S, but my receiver is, so it will allow me to use one of my flight batteries if I go dead on my other batteries here. The other thing I've got in here is a battery tester. Shows me the voltage, can also work as an alarm, and I do actually carry one of the small alarm type ones as well that I normally put on my goggle battery, so I don't forget if that goes flat, it'll warn me. In the bottom of my bag here I do carry some spare props with me. In this pack, just a few sets of spare props if I do get some sessions in and my checked baggage is off still at the airline. And just looking now at the other items that were in the bag, my transmitter, which I put inside of this case. I think it's designed for a Spectrum, but there's my Tyrannus there. My Quantum V2 goggles, which have been slightly modified. I do also have head play goggles, but they don't fit in this bag, so when I travel I use Quantums. Ideally I'd like to probably get a set of Fat Sharks to travel with, but these are very, very light, and yeah, they're a little bit bulkier, but still quite a bit smaller than the head plays, and they're cheap. If anything happens to them, I'm not going to cry over it. On the top here I have my receiver. This is how it came. Well, there it is, Dal RC. I actually bought it through my RC Mart, I think. I put a little 5-volt Pololu type thing on top there. It uses dip switches, which is a bit of a pain in the bum, but it is super lightweight, and I just power that off of one of the 3S, small 3S packs I carry, and that's my receiver and goggle set. And then finally, the last item in here is my mobile chair. I'll unpack that, unpacked and ready for assembly. The skeleton, and here is the chair assembled. So there you have the contents of my carry-on bag as I pack it to take on the aeroplane. Now a closer look at the rest of the items that I'm putting in my checked baggage. First of all, a whole bunch of spare props and a few spare video antennas. That's my bulk spares. I have here a charger. This is my 4S charger to charge my 4S batteries. Remembering that I'm only flying sort of at each end of the week, so I've got the whole week to charge my batteries. If you were planning to fly every day and needed to charge a lot of batteries quickly, then this isn't going to work for you. But this suits me, and it's very lightweight, only about 150 or 200 grams for this charger. It doesn't come with this Lipo safety bag. I bought that separately through Hobby King, I think, and in there I keep the cables and bits and pieces for the charger. Now this charger, there's leads, etc. It's got balance ports on the side that'll charge up to 4S. It is only a 20 watt charger. It does have a 1 amp, 2 amp, 3 amp, but if you do the maths, yeah, there's the 3 amp option really isn't suitable for 4S, or it doesn't give you any extra advantage, because the charger is actually limited to about 1.3 or 1.4 amps charging 4S batteries. So it's not the fastest thing in the world, but at 35 odd Australian dollars, I know about 25 US dollars, it suits me. Comes with this type of cable, in particular paying attention that this has a figure 8 connector in it, which is very, very common. So if I travel to a country that doesn't use my plug, it's not the end of the world. It's not too hard to find these. I actually plan to find a few spare of these cables that are a lot shorter. I don't need the metre or metre and a half of cable that comes with it. Obviously the Lipo safety bag for charging was bought separately. So that's my main 4S charger. Then you'll see another Lipo bag here. This one actually has another charger in it. I plan to change this one out for one of those other ones, but I've had this one a little bit longer. This one was only about $10 or $15, once again a Lipo bag from Hobby King. And this one, yeah, came from somewhere in Asia. Actually came with a European type plug and an Australian adapter. So this is sort of handy in that if I go to a hotel that doesn't have Australian plugs, then I've already got one of these cables with a figure 8 connector on it that I can use with either charger to charge my batteries. This one is only useful for charging 2S and 3S batteries, and it just has a fixed current supply for it. And so this I just use to charge my video goggle batteries and my video receiver batteries, but ideally I'll plan to replace that one with one of these slightly larger ones that then I can charge more flight batteries as well as goggle batteries. Have a little adapter to be able to do the other batteries with that charger. So that's my charging setup. Here's how I make use of the hotel porcelain coffee cups. Just an extra safety measure when charging on a flammable surface. A couple more items that I've got here. Little box of spare parts. In here I have, let's tip it out, a few spare battery straps, a spare 1177 camera that's common to both of the quads, a spare Lipoly ESC, a spare motor for the QAV, and a spare motor for the Mitsuko. Now I also have a 12 volt soldering iron that I sometimes pack in my checked luggage. It just plugs into a 3S battery, but because this trip I knew I'd probably have access to a soldering iron potentially here in Singapore, I didn't bring it, but that's another option to carry that. It was only $10 or $15 from Hobby King for that soldering iron. And here I have my little spares and tool bag, which I throw in my backpack when I actually go out to the field, but this goes in my checked baggage for a couple of reasons. Let me open that up and show you what's inside. Here's the contents of my little kit bag that goes in my checked luggage for obvious reasons. I have some cable ties in here, a camera tuning cable, this a scalpel, which is obviously part of the reason why it's checked. I have another prop or 8mm spanner for the prop nuts, so this is my backup one if my other one gets confiscated. I have a Allen key set here. This is aluminium. It came from Banggood for about $8. It's got in the base of it here, pull the plug out and you've got all your typical Allen key wrenches that then clip in the top. Great little service tool. A pair of small pointy nose pliers, pair of small side cutters, a selection here of heat shrink. Now, can't carry a cigarette lighter in checked baggage, but if I needed to, I could find somebody with a cigarette lighter, hopefully, and I could use that to shrink the heat shrink if I needed to. Another little bag of spares here, some M3 screws and washers and spare nuts and other bits and pieces, hardware. And here the magic old hotel toothbrush that comes in handy for cleaning. I'd like to wish you a safe journey and hope you enjoy flying in a foreign location. If you like the information I've brought you, please consider subscribing to my channel. Thanks and bye for now.